My name's Paula Orrell. I am the director of the Contemporary Visual Arts Network for England. The reason why we have included England in our new kind of branding and title is that we realized during the pandemic they were obviously part of a kind of wider UK-wide Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland kind of network as well, and thought it's useful to kind of make that distinction at the geographical region. We've been working really collectively across the last nearly 2 years. My dog's just come into the room, just come to say hello as well. It's been in a way, and this is sort of an ironic thing to say, the pandemic has been a really useful space for us to come together collectively as a network than we were before the pandemic. And I suppose it's that agency and urgency that has created that kind of collective action and discussion, but also the network was slightly a little bit kind of, I suppose, not consolidated in its sort of ambitions together. So the work that I've been doing really over the last couple of years has been about trying to achieve a national programme that we can all work towards, and I'll talk about that a little bit further. When at the start of the pandemic, I have responsible lead for Visual Arts Southwest, which is the CVAN Southwest region, and I wasn't doing the national work. And at the beginning of the pandemic, we were all noticing across the network that there wasn't this advocacy and policy work with our stakeholders and funders, stakeholders, and also government. And there was a lack of visibility when it came to the visual arts in relation to any policy decisions and discussion around the table. So we really took that as an opportunity to change what we do and to represent the sector, and to be in a position where we can use the network to be able to understand the data and evidence that the government needs. So we kind of reframed ourselves as as an organisation where we meet kind of policy change. That's kind of our sort of set agenda. We also see ourselves really, as a network that, is working across 9 regions from Cornwall to Cumbria, and being interconnected into the experiences and voices and geographical reach of each of those regions. So we have the knowledge and evidence and intelligence to be able to kind of make decisions and be able to kind of bring that information together quite effectively. This is a slide that gives you a picture of the 9 regions. Some are different, some aren't called CVAN, as an example, Visual Arts Southwest. We've got also New Art West Midlands, but we're all associated and connected to a national portfolio organisation. Well, we will be, and except for London, which is part of UCL and Slade School of Art, kind of help lead the London network, which has really advanced in the last couple of years as well. So the framework that was developed by Arts Council England back in sort of 2012 was to kind of tuck each of the regions, their core funding, into an MPO. And we in our regions can all apply for project grants as well, which makes us a kind of unique position. The national network is with the Baltic in Gateshead. So when the Arts Council produced this research on what was needed to support the visual arts, and it was called Turning Point. The Baltic decided to be the kind of national hub for the network itself. So I work with Sarah Monroe, he's the director of the Baltic, and also live and work in the Southwest as well. So I have these kind of this national connection, but also a deep kind of understanding of the Southwest region. We've been doing a lot of work around our aims and our vision, but just for now to show you that, you know, this is really what we see, what we're doing as a network. And YVAN's been absolutely fundamental in the research, especially around museums and gallery exhibition tax relief, and really leading an advocacy campaign for the continuation of the tax relief for charities. And that's an ongoing piece of work that I'm partnering with Sue Ball and UCL on a piece of unique research, starting to think about what the value is to organisations through this tax relief as well. We then use that information to be able to advocate. We're not going to use the word lobby, we advocate. So we get our networks to write to their ministers, their MPs, and talk about the value. We as a network ourselves write to the Chancellor and tell the Chancellor how critical and important the tax relief is. So that's a big piece of work that we're kind of doing moving forward, and it's fundamental to the infrastructure of galleries, public art gallery network across the country, and museums as well, obviously. But that's a really key thing that we're driving forward through till 2024, because there's an additional policy on it called a sunset clause, which we will get removed, and then it will continue for forever because it's been adopted by government. So sunset clause means that there's a time and period where it needs to either one, show its value, or be made redundant. So that's the work that we're doing with YVAN specifically. Yeah, it's very difficult to kind of think of ourselves as influencing policy, but I'd say that our job is to talk to ministers. It is to develop these relationships, and I can talk about how we've gone about doing that over the last year specifically as well. This is the national team. We work with freelancers, so majority of people here are on a part-time contract, so they're project funded, particularly in relation to the fair and equitable work as well. And that is really, really growing as a national campaign, as a sector support national campaign for the visual arts to really undertake fair and equitable work. So we're focusing primarily on the evidence base and understanding of the systemic barriers that our colleagues face from a protected characteristics, but particularly an intersectional lens. So we're really focused on the cross kind of experience of colleagues who are marginalised. So this, I suppose, are the 4 areas that we're focusing our work on, and we've just coming to the end of a first pilot phase of this research, which has led to a set of kind of online discussions. And today we have a kind of conference really online that you can all use as a resource. So for today, for instance, we've had a talk by a marketing expert called Benita Walia. And Benita was talking about language and the representation of language, and how to really think about addressing that within your organisation, your practice, or representing who you are as well. It was really, really great talk. And then in a minute now, Amanda Parker is talking about what happens when things go wrong. And they do go wrong. And that's something that we need to really unpick as we go forward, and as we know the impact that some colleagues have been affected, especially by a large institution recently as well. So these are the 4 areas that we want to kind of keep working towards across the next 5 years, and then we'll fundraise for more investment into this area of the programme. We have a Visual Arts Alliance. So this was a big thing that we kind of really did spearhead out of the urgency of the pandemic. So really bringing sector support organisations in the visual arts together to have those conversations. And we've produced also research on the impact of the artists' livelihoods as well. So that was actually the impetus to set up the Visual Arts Alliance. We're active when we need to be at the moment, because we're all really small organisations. We led a campaign around the devaluing of arts education, which was really great to have these groups around the table and signing this letter and ensuring that we received over 400 signatures, writing to Department or Secretary of Education. So this is the kind of work that we're trying to achieve for the sector, to be visible and to try and influence policy where we can. We've set up a visual arts all-party parliamentary group that is about informing ministers, and it's cross-party, and it has to be cross-party. So it's about bringing ministers together to be able to hold that space and that conversation, and inform and develop their knowledge and understanding. Particularly, we have really great members from the House of Lords who are around the table, and it has been hard work, because MPs, ministers have been very busy, an insanely ridiculous period of our history. So it's at a point where we hope in the next year we can really get this going, and bring a bit more attention to it, and actually invite the whole network to join the meetings as well. It's set up in partnership with DAX and AN, so that's really important, for the fact that they're the 2 really kind of major organisations, that sector support organisations that we're partnering with on the all-party parliamentary group. And this is just to go over some areas of policy where we've made some influence and we've achieved some impact. The Brexit impact study report is an ongoing report that we're utilising, and we talk to Department for Trade around the opportunity of perhaps for small commercial galleries, which are part of the ecology and the suffering because of Brexit, and that's impacting on their business. We did a lot of campaigning around the artists' livelihoods, which opened up finally and eventually with others who were in other art forms were doing this campaigning, for the government to understand that they needed to support freelancers. So we are asking for the big thing that we're asking for is a freelance commissioner out of this. So we need the government to have a freelance commissioner that really represents artists and art workers in our sector. I've discussed the HEI subsidy cut, and one of the early bits of work that I adopted, and that Sue and I kind of we worked with an all-party parliamentary group, and one of the strange things that came out of this work, which is very kind of early on in developing what we're doing now, and a lot of learning, but there's things like SOC codes which are standard occupational classifications that don't exist for the visual arts. They do for artists, but they don't for other other professional practices in our sector as well.